Football News presents today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall. On today's Sports Report, we'll talk about University of Georgia football and more. Today's Sports Report is brought to you by Happy Sewing and Quilting, offering products that will help you show your bulldog pride. Hall Shots Photography, going above and beyond to provide pristine and professional photography for all of life's greatest moments, plus many other fine sponsors. And now, here's your host of today's Sports Report, Chris Hall.
Hey guys, it's good to have you with us today on today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall, the Facebook Live edition. I'm Chris Hall. In the middle, we have our good friend Mike Farrell from Rivals.com. He's going to join us on our program today. And on the far right is Matthew Hall. So it's good to have you guys with us today as we go Facebook Live for today's Sports Report. First of all, Mike, Happy New Year to you. We hadn't seen you since last year. So how is 2021 treating you so far?
Oh, it's off to an amazing start.
Yeah, I know you got. I know you have been really busy with what's been happening in college football and with recruiting and all the news that is going on. And so we're going to talk a little bit today about what's happening in college football and see if we can kind of give some good information to everyone. And Matthew, how you doing this morning? You looking good? Okay, I think you probably need to hit something there. We can't quite get you your audio. There you go. All right, you with us, Matthew? Okay, he's kind of freezing up. And we'll see if we can connect with Matthew a little better. So, Mike, since we're trying to get Matt back in here and get him all freed up, let's talk a little bit about college football. And we thought we'd just take a moment. We haven't really done this since the end of the Peach Bowl, but we thought we would take just a moment and talk a little bit about University of Georgia and the Peach Bowl and how Georgia played with Cincinnati. Of course, we who are University of Georgia football fans, we were really excited about the fact that Georgia was able to pull out that win on the Podlesny's 53-yard field goal with just a very few seconds left. And then, of course, Georgia got a setback or a touchback on the final play of the game. But Georgia winning that game 24-21 over Cincinnati. And but Matt, for people who are interested in the University of Georgia, boy, that was a good football game. We were sitting on the edge of our seats, and Matthew and I talked in one of our programs about the fact that we thought it was going to be a close game, that Cincinnati would be very motivated. Georgia sometimes is not really motivated when it comes to games like this where they feel disappointed about not being in the national playoffs. But Cincinnati played great. Georgia was able to pull it out. It looked like it was on the edge. What was your impression of that game? Cincinnati's a great team, and what was your impression of the game?
Yeah, they're a good football team. I thought Georgia would blow them out, honestly. And the reason for that is I didn't think there would be any sort of letdown from Georgia that they didn't make the playoff because they weren't close to making the playoff. Obviously, with too long. Having quarterback troubles until JT Daniels came along and Texas M being a little bit down for their bowl game. But not Georgia. I thought they would really try to refresh season. We've got our quarterback. We assume he's coming back. Let's get some of these young guys involved. They were missing some players, of course. But Cincinnati, this was their Super Bowl. And they'd come to play for sure. It was a little bit disappointing to me from a national perspective that Georgia didn't put them away, especially with their advantage in the running game and their size offensively, with the offensive line and the way that I think they could have just sort of pounded the football at them and worn them down. But a win is a win, and I just don't think they expected as much fire from Cincinnati. And it's hard to gauge that when you're dealing with a team that it has something to prove. So, a good win, but I expected a little bit more when it comes to dominating that football game.
Yeah. Cincinnati, of course, going into the game, they were undefeated, and they had beaten three teams, I believe, that had been ranked at the time they played them in the top 10. And Georgia had a little, at the end of the season, you always have those guys who are opting out, and that creates a little kind of thing, I think, in your team when you have guys opting out and saying, well, we're not going to play in the bowl game. And I've never been on a college football team. But it would seem to me that when you get into a situation like that, where you have some of your players that you've depended on all year saying, we're going to opt out, and I can certainly understand that. I can understand them, and I can understand their thinking, and I'm not being critical of them whatsoever. But for me, wouldn't you think that would put a little? I don't know if Cincinnati had anybody opting out or not, but for Georgia and for teams like that, don't you think that puts a little thing on you? Maybe a little depressive thing, or maybe it's a positive thing. I don't know. What do you think when you have players opting out like that?
I think, the players understand why others are opting out, and there's really not a lot at stake. I mean, it's a New Year's Six game, but it's not really, for anything. There's really no one to remember that, Georgia beat Cincinnati in a few years. They're going to remember Alabama versus Ohio State. So
right.
Players understand, but what happens is, you get some guys like Tyson Campbell, who, is a potential first rounder who stays, and Eric Stokes, who's a potential first rounder who doesn't. And you expect young guys to jump in and pick up where the others left off because there's so much talent in Georgia and all these 4-stars. But they're not ready to do that. So it's trial by fire for a lot of the guys that have been, backing up these players. I don't mind the way Georgia did it. I do mind the way Florida did it because it was their whole receiving crew. It was at Florida, and so I see why they don't get them.
Yeah. Well, in Florida, of course, boy, I will turn the page on some of these games that involved SEC players. Florida, what in the world happened with Florida in that game with Oklahoma? Of course, that was the Cotton Bowl, and Oklahoma just took it to Florida 55-20. Of course, being an SEC kind of guy, I kind of watched that game, and not really being a Dan Mullen guy. He's not really one of my favorite guys, even when he was at Mississippi State. But I was just, I don't know. It looked like Florida just definitely didn't want to be there. I know they had guys opt out. Oklahoma definitely was firing on all cylinders. The Oklahoma quarterback, Rattler, he had a great game. Can you explain to me that game? How in the world could Oklahoma take on Florida like that and win such a game like that?
Well, I mean, again, they had their 4 top wide receivers out, and if you have a position decimated like that, when you're a team that can't run the football, you're in big trouble. And there's no explosive plays down the field. And I understand Kyle Pitts opting out because he's a top 10 pick. Kadarius Toney to an extent, but I think he could have helped his stock because he's a fringe second-round guy to me. I know some people are talking first-round and Percy Harvin comparisons, but I see him more as a second-rounder. Copeland was on the COVID list, so that's not his fault, but Trevin Grimes is a 5th-rounder. So I would have thought that he would have stayed and raised his stock as well. So I feel that they sort of abandoned Kyle Trask because Kyle Trask, if he opts out as the leader of the football team and a quarterback, he will get criticism. The wide receivers don't get as much criticism, and they left him with no weapons whatsoever. The defense has been shaky all season long in Florida. Grantham is coming back, which I think is not a good decision. I don't think Mullen had that team up. When he comes in and says the last time the Florida Gators played was 11 days ago, meaning that this game wasn't Florida, it shows no pride in the team. So, I really think that sends a message to everybody as to how you handle, your players, and he kind of threw everybody under the bus. So there were opt-outs in Georgia. They have excuses. They didn't use any of them. They won the football game. Had they lost, they wouldn't have used any of them.
Right.
But Florida did. So, I think Georgia's in a much better position moving forward with JT Daniels and the young receivers and Kendall Milton and some of the exciting offensive guys you have there and some of the young defensive players. Whereas Florida, I'm just not sure how much those guys are going to want to play for him.
Yeah. And Dan, of course, there's been speculation Dan Mullen might be headed to the NFL. And, what are you hearing? Is that the viable thing? Is that something that could happen? Has Dan Mullen already wore his welcome out in Florida going either way? What do you think? What are you hearing?
Yeah, I mean, they would love to have him back, obviously. I think he's interested in the pros. He's never been a guy who's loved recruiting.
Yeah.
I think if, the Atlanta Falcons throw a ton of money at him and want him to be their coach, then that's what they're going to do. These guys are all in interesting situations because of the lack of minority hires in the NFL. So
right,
you got Urban Meyer linked to Jacksonville. You got Dan Mullen linked to Atlanta. You got, other coaches like Jim Harbaugh will get interest, obviously, and we don't know what's going to happen there. Brian Kelly at Notre Dame will get interest. But there's a lot of pressure from the NFL to hire minorities and give them an opportunity, as they should, because there's only 3 head coaches that are minorities in the NFL. So
right.
I think it affect a lot of things. If Atlanta goes from Raheem Morris, who gave that team kind of a little bit of a boost, even though they didn't win down the stretch, to a Dan Mullen, optically, it's just not a good look. But it really comes down to the owner and what he wants to do. And I think it's very possible that Dan Mullen could be an NFL guy. Now, if he interviews and comes back, he loses his team in respect, and he loses recruiting a bit too, because that's going to stay with him. That's going to stay with him recruiting, and everybody's going to say, why go to Florida when he's going to interview for the NFL? And that's where he really wants to be. So it's risky, to do that unless going 100% to get the job and be in the NFL.
Yeah. And speaking of recruiting, of course, we had you on a while back and we were talking about recruiting. And of course, you're an expert when it comes to recruiting and the different aspects of that. Georgia had you guys had them finally at number 4, I think, in the country, the number 4 class. Is that right? As anything since we have talked to you last, anything changed in that regard? Georgia's still up there pretty good?
Yeah, they're 5. And when you talk about average star rating, which is important, and not the beginning and end of all, because people look at our point system and they're like, it's flawed. You're only taking the top 20 guys.
Right.
That's just fair for everybody involved. I mean, Notre Dame has 27 commitments. Alabama has 26. Georgia has 20. Those teams shouldn't get an advantage over Georgia because they're taking more kids and they got more room. But average star ranking is also devalued a bit when you take a kicker or a long snapper, because those guys are never going to be 4 stars. So 3.9 average star ranking is excellent. They're not going to finish number 1. It'll be the first time in 3 years that happens. They didn't close as well as they would have liked on certain kids, but it's still an excellent class. I mean, you got 2 5 stars and 14 4 stars here. Talent is never going to be the problem at Georgia. I just don't know. They came so close with that Devonta Smith touchdown pass, winning the national championship. I don't know if they're going to get that close again. I do have them, however, as a very, very good playoff possibility for next season, and some of these freshmen are going to impact that.
Yeah. Well, of course, the pressure, I think, as you continue to have these great recruiting classes at the University of Georgia, I think the pressure on Kirby Smart to produce a national championship grows. Now, if it continues that Georgia comes close but not quite there, what's going to be the outcome of that? I mean, if you stretch it down 3 or 4 years from now and Georgia still is on the brink but never really crossing the goal line with a national championship, is the Georgia fan base going to get so antsy? They're going to say, well, he's recruiting great, but we want that national championship. Georgia is so hungry for that. Mm-hmm. I mean, give me your crystal ball, the expectation. What do you think the consequence of that will be?
It'll be Mark Richt. But quick. they won't give him as long. I think Rick was there for a decade or more, and recruited well. Not as good as Kirby. Won his division a few times, but never broke through to the Georgia fans are tired of hearing 1980. It's just every response on social media to anything they say is 1980. And that has to change, and it has to change under Kirby Smart over the next 4 years or 5 years, or he's going to be gone. And he could have a stellar record like Rick did, a great reputation, and he could recruit, lights out, but it won't matter unless he wins it all. So, but that's the expectations at Georgia, and that's the SEC, and that's why he gets paid millions of dollars, and that's life. If you do that expectation, remain an assistant coach or, go to a smaller school. So I really don't have any sympathy. There's certain coaches that want recruiting ratings lower, which is kind of weird. Because they don't want the expectations. My class is 8th in the country, really like that knocked down to 15th. And I'm like, well, we don't do that. Don't move them up or down.
Do they actually call you and ask you that? Do they really?
That question asked many times, mostly up. Can I get this class up? And they do have bonuses involved with it. I mean, there's certain coaches that have $250,000 bonuses involved with how many 4 or 5 stars. Wow. So there's money on the line, but overall, with recruiting come expectations in the SEC. When you see Alabama doing it consistently, and they've had the top class 8 of 10 years under Saban, and he's won numerous titles, and Kirby's won 3 straight, and he's got nothing to show for it from a national title perspective, people will get antsy. And you look at the teams above them in our recruiting rankings, Alabama, Ohio State's won recently, and they're in the title game. LSU won last year. Clemson's won 2 and in the playoff. And then there's Georgia. So they're kind of the odd team out when it comes to recruiting rankings, and that will have to change on the field.
Yeah, I did. Well, we're looking, Georgia fans are really looking forward to next year with JT Daniels coming back and James Cook coming back, Devontae Wyatt coming back, and a good recruiting class coming in. Let's kind of turn the page a little bit and go to the Heisman Trophy. Devontae Smith, the Heisman Trophy winner for 2020. Certainly deserving of that. That is no surprise whatsoever. My prediction was for Mac Jones, simply because he's a quarterback. The Heisman Trophy seems to be a quarterback kind of thing. But I have absolutely no qualms with Devontae Smith being the Heisman Trophy winner. A fantastic player, former commit to Georgia, I might add, before he flipped and went to Alabama. One surprise for me was the fact that Justin Fields was 7th in the voting for the Heisman Trophy. Of course, Trevor Lawrence was number 2 in the voting, Mac Jones number 3, then Kyle Trask, Najee Harris number 5, Breece Hall from Iowa State number 6, and then Justin Fields. Was that a surprise to you? First of all, are you? I'm sure you're in agreement with Devontae Smith being the winner, but what about Justin Fields at number 7?
We're living in a world now where people are a prisoner of the moment, and what you've done for last week is what people judge things on. Right. And it's very frustrating. Justin Fields didn't have a great game against Indiana, and he had a very poor game against Northwestern, and that eliminated all his chances. And I get that. Is he still one of the top 2 talents in college football? Yeah, I'm rolling out my Farrell 50 this week. Of the 50 best players in college football, and Justin Fields is in the top 5 easily. I think a case could have been made for Najee Harris, but I love Devontae Smith having received this award because it opens things up for wide receivers.
Right. And when was the last time a wide receiver won? I know I read that somewhere.
Desmond Howard 100 years ago.
Desmond.
And there's guys like Julian Blackmon at Oklahoma State and Michael Crabtree at Texas Tech that were on top 25 teams that put up numbers better than Devontae Smith. And of course, this is a shortened season, but this is an all SEC schedule, and what he's done is amazing. Now, had Jalen Waddle been healthy, the numbers would have been diminished a bit. Had Trevor Lawrence not missed 3 games, because you have to remember 2 with COVID and then the cancellation of the Florida State game, his stats would have been enough to give him the Heisman Trophy because it is a quarterback award. But I'm glad a wide receiver. I think Justin Fields redeemed himself in the playoff, and I'm glad he did.
Yeah, boy, he had a great game. Wow.
Yeah, because all these guys, these draft guys, and I dabble in the draft too because I've known these kids for so long, and I do scout them at the college level as well. You know, all of a sudden you saw in mock drafts that Justin Fields was a fourth quarterback, and he went from number 2 to the Jets all the way down to like the teens. And Zach Wilson was suddenly the guy who was going to be picked second, and other players. Even I saw Mac Jones ahead of him, Justin Fields, in one mock draft, and I'm like, you guys are crazy. From a talent perspective, Justin Fields is number 2 to Trevor Lawrence, and then there's a large gap after him to Zach Wilson or Kyle Trask or anybody else. You know, North Dakota State kid, Trey Lance. Like any of these guys are big drop-offs. So, but again, the numbers, they only played 6 games. He didn't have the statistics, so I get that Fields wasn't higher. But I like I said, everybody was counting him out after Northwestern, and now they're talking about how tough he is and how great he is again. And that's what we live in, this Twitter world of Justin Fields sucks 2 weeks ago, and now he's great.
Now he's a great thing. Yeah, I understand. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about the national championship game coming up, of course. January 11th, we think. A lot of COVID discussion going on about that, but so far, so good for January 11th. Ohio State and Alabama. Ohio State 7-0 on the year. Alabama, of course, 12-0. And the Alabama Crimson Tide winning over, getting into the ball game with a big win. And so you got Ohio State now and Alabama. It should be a great game, should be a good game, but my heart is with the SEC, but also my head. I look at the two teams. I just think Alabama is the better team, but you never know in games like this, right? So I'm taking Alabama. What do you think?
I have Alabama too, but I also felt that Clemson would beat Ohio State, and right. That was not even a close football game. The question marks I had about Ohio State going into that game were their defensive backs. It's not a great group. They play a lot of off coverage, but Clemson didn't have the wide receivers to really take advantage of that, nor did they have the running game up front, the physicality of the offensive line to keep Ohio State off balance. Those guys didn't have to worry about the run, so they could stay back, and no big plays were really made. And against Alabama, you've got a very, very formidable offensive line. You've got a great running back who can not only run and catch the ball. So you're going to have to play up closer to the line of scrimmage, and that's where the Devontae Smiths and Mechis and the rest of them, and who knows, Waddle's rumored that he might play. That's where they could hurt you. But I will say this. I think it's going to be a good game. I don't think it's going to be a blowout, and I think that's great for college football because right. Justin Fields seems to be on a little bit of a mission since that Northwestern game. Chris Olave is a tremendous receiver. Garrett Wilson is a tremendous receiver. They got talented tight ends. Their offensive line is as good as Alabama's. Trey Sermon's a downhill guy. They score on Alabama. The biggest issue is going to be the big plays, and I think Alabama will have a couple more and win this by a touchdown.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a high-scoring game. That's the way it is in college football now. But what do you think? I don't think it's going to be like a 14-9 game at all. I think, these defenses are just going to try to kind of hold the other guy down while their offense scores. What do you think?
Yeah, if you have two good quarterbacks, there's just no way to have a 14-9 game. There's no way a defense can stop. Defense is at such a disadvantage in college football in so many ways now, targeting just being the latest addition. But, you can't touch guys beyond this point of the line of scrimmage. Any play that's a 50-50 ball is going to be called against the defensive back for interference mostly. The wide receivers can get away with subtle push-offs. Your defense just doesn't really have a chance to slow people down. So I see a high-scoring game as well. I'm not sure what the over is in Vegas, but they usually know pretty well, and I'm sure it's high. I'm looking for a bit of a shootout. I think it's going to come down to big plays and mistakes. And I think Ohio State is probably going to just make maybe one or two mistakes that Alabama just doesn't make, because Alabama simply does not make mistakes.
Yeah, a good football team, as good of an Alabama football team as I have ever seen in reality, and just a really good football team. I think Vegas had Alabama at an 8-point favorite the last time I saw. So, that may be holding true or not. One final note, and Mike Farrell from Rivals.com with us today on today's Sports Report. And we appreciate you taking time to be with us, Mike. But one other thing, Steve Sarkisian going to Texas. Of course, the offensive coordinator for the University of Alabama, now the head football coach at Texas. I didn't see that one coming. What do you think about the hire? And will it have an effect on the national championship game?
It was interesting because we thought Tom Herman had survived. They blew out Colorado in their bowl game. If he was going to be fired, a lot of people thought it would be before signing day or during the season. So there was kind of a sense of relief from everybody that, okay, we're, and relief is sometimes good, sometimes bad, but we're going to see another year of Tom Herman. Then out of the blue on Saturday that he's fired, and instantly came out that Sarkisian was the guy that they wanted and targeted, had an agreement with him. I thought, it was Urban Meyer or bust. But it was, I think they were afraid he was going to get another job at the NFL level. I think they really wanted him and his offensive ability at Texas with some of the young talent they have. My question is going to be how will he recruit? He's a good recruiter. He had the #1 recruiting class in the country at USC in 2015, but that's USC. Geographical advantage. Now you've got A&M, Oklahoma, LSU, Alabama, you name it. Everybody's in the state of Texas, Ohio State, trying to get these kids. So that's going to be his biggest challenge. But from what I understand, this was a recruiting move more than anything else to save the 2022 class, which is a very, very deep class in the state of Texas. Get those kids on board and let Sarkisian work with the young talent and hope it works out. I don't know if it will, but I will say this: it's embarrassing for Texas to not be Texas for the last 10 years. That's a somewhat easy job.
Yeah, and there's such a recruiting base in Texas. And you're right, Texas has not been Texas for so long. Boy, you're talking about a pressure cooker to produce that football position at the University of Texas. You better get it going, and you better get it going pretty quick. That fan base is so hungry now to see Texas back, and they should be. They ought to be with the recruiting base they have and just the appeal that the University of Texas has. But boy, they lose a lot of players out of the state of Texas to teams like Georgia and Florida and Ohio State, as you say. So I don't know. God bless Steve Sarkisian. He's a good guy and he's a good coach. He's got a proven record, but boy, that's going to be a tough one. Well, Mike, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to try to hook back up with Matthew. We lost him in the great beyond, but Happy New Year to you. And tell us a little bit about how things are going at Rivals.com. And people, I love your post. I'm Facebook friends with you, and I check on you almost on a daily basis for things that you put out every day. And I would encourage people to hook up with Mike Farrell because if you want to know what's happening in recruiting or in college football, for me, he's an #1 source. Tell us how people can catch up with you and keep up to date with what you're posting and the information you're sharing.
Yeah, we have a great Georgia site, UGAsports.com, and we support them from a national level, with all sorts of recruiting updates and news. And I'm an opinionated person, and I'm not afraid to be so in the recruiting business or in the college football business. So follow me at Rivals Mike on Twitter. You'll get realism. If you don't want that, then don't follow me because I will burst some bubbles. I will say some bad things about programs that aren't succeeding, and I will say good things about programs that are. And on Instagram, I'm at Rivals Godfather. I'm building TikTok now, which is hilarious.
Yeah, that's funny. Mike Farrell on TikTok. Oh boy.
Rivals Godfather on there too.
Are you going to dance on TikTok?
not dance, not once, not ever.
Okay. All
Ever
right.
It's just my head, my floaty head talking about stuff. So, but yeah, I think the interesting things in college football on a daily basis, like today with Tennessee, with the hiring freeze and the transfer of Eric Gilbert and whether he's going to go to Tennessee and now he might go to Georgia or someplace else. I'm going to talk about all that stuff on a daily basis every day, and I love it. So if you follow me, feel free to interact and let me know what you think. I don't care if it's good or bad. And that's the fun part about this job.
Yeah. Well, Mike, thank you so much. It's good to have you on our program today, and we'll hook back up with you in the near future and talk some more about college football because we love it around here and we love the big G, as you can see behind us. But thank you, Mike, for being with us today.
Okay, no problem.
All right. And Mike Farrell from the Rivals.com. All right, we're going to hook back up with our good buddy Matthew Hall. We're going to take a break, and we'll try to get back with him in just a moment, and we'll be back on today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall in just a moment.
Don't go away. We'll be back in just a moment with more of today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall.
Hall Shots Photography, featuring the work of award-winning photographer and Georgia football lover Matthew Hall, is a proud sponsor of today's Sports Report. While Matthew is at home on the sidelines of Sanford Stadium taking beautiful action shots of another Bulldog victory, he also specializes in other types of photography, including landscapes, portraits, weddings, and promotional photos to help promote your business or your special cause. Matthew is also a trained videographer, and he loves capturing those always exciting high-in-the-sky drone shots. Matthew has been the camp photographer for various football camps, including those featuring Roquan Smith, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, and other Bulldog greats. You can check out Matthew's work on Facebook at Hall Shots Photo and on Instagram at Hall Shots Photography. You can contact Matthew at hallshotsphotography@gmail.com. That's hallshotsphotography@gmail.com. Matthew has a camera, and he'll travel to get that right shot for you. Contact him today.
Happy Sewing and Quilting is a proud sponsor of today's Sports Report. Happy Sewing and Quilting offers custom and professionally made items that will help you show your Bulldog pride. How about a custom and professionally made 100% cotton face mask featuring beautiful Bulldog fabric? Of course, everyone in your family will need more than one. And just like the Bulldogs on game day, Happy Sewing and Quilting can and will deliver. From custom-made face masks to baby bibs to tote bags and more, Happy Sewing and Quilting will help you get ready for game day or any day you want to let the world know you love the Georgia Bulldogs. If you're interested in items featuring the colors and logos of other teams, or if you're interested in non-sports related items that meet your taste and show off your style, Happy Sewing and Quilting will be more than happy to help you. For more information, you can contact Happy Sewing and Quilting at ahall1921@hotmail.com. That's AHALL1921@hotmail.com. Contact them today.
Thank you for joining us, and welcome back to today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall.
All right, we're back on today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall, and it's good to have Matthew Hall back with us. Hey, Matt, you all right?
Hey, doing well. I had some connection issues there, but we got somewhat figured out.
Yeah, well, of course, we continued on with our interview with Mike Farrell and from Rivals.com, and just a good guy, and he shared a lot of good information with us. We'll touch back in with you and kind of get a perspective on different things that we talked about with Mike. First of all, we did talk a little bit about the Peach Bowl game and Georgia's big victory over Cincinnati in the Peach Bowl game, 24-21. It's been a while since we've talked about that, and of course, it's old news, but it's good news for Georgia. Georgia extended the nation's largest active bowl streak to 24 in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and with their win, they improved to 33-21-3. in all-time bowl record. It was Georgia's first appearance in the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl since 2006. Again, Georgia winning 24-21. Just your final recap, your final thought on that game with Georgia and Cincinnati.
Well, I mean, it was just, I think back on the game, and again, I think I made a second, just for, a couple of days ago, I had reminiscence of, the Rose Bowl where Georgia played Oklahoma. I mean, it was just your seed game the entire time. I mean, you got to tip your hat to Cincinnati. I mean, the ball game definitely could have went either way. Grateful that Georgia really stayed on the grind and come out on top. And it shows that Georgia didn't quit. I mean, when they had guys, that had opted out for this game, the next man in came, filled those positions, and Georgia played well. And I'm just thankful they, come out with a W. Might give me a heart attack to get it, but just an overall great game. I mean, and it's so refreshing to actually see. I know Georgia is known as running back U or RBU for our great running backs over, all the years. But it was so refreshing to actually see the quarterback throw the ball to our wide receivers. Something we haven't seen really, in a great fashion since Jake Fromm back in 2017, really, in my opinion.
Yeah, JT Daniels having a great game. Again, he's 4-0 as the starting quarterback for the University of Georgia. Can't beat that. So JT, of course, finishing up the year on a strong note, and he will be coming back in the 2021 season, along with junior running back James Cook and senior defensive tackle Devontae Wyatt. Some of the seniors, some of the juniors have opted out. Eric Stokes, Richard LeConte, Ben Cleveland, Monty Rice. Of course, those two guys were seniors, but seniors could come back for another season, but they decided to go into the draft. Matt Landers, junior, Richard Jr. from Florida, has entered the transfer portal. So Georgia has some players going out, but of course they got some players staying and some new players coming in. So high anticipation for the University of Georgia next year, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that Georgia is really in the driver's seat. Next season, I would not be one bit surprised, with JT Daniels making the decision and making it well known right away, following this game that he intends to come back. I actually saw a post on his Instagram page, and it said to be continued, and it was him walking down with some other players walking down the aisle there at Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So, just that mindset. I mean, I think that there will be all around the world of college football, whether or not it's coming from a Georgia Bulldog News perspective or not. I think that Georgia will be, top 3 teams starting the season, next, in the rankings next year. And I look for Georgia to be really successful and really grow in that passing game. And, once the passing game, I mean, Georgia like I said, I haven't seen in a while. I think once you get that really going, and then you have the running game there as well. I mean, it's a pick your poison situation. And it's just refreshing to see a mixture of both and both be successful. And, I'm very excited about, George Pickens. I mean, I really believe that George Pickens is the best wide receiver in the country. I know that he's had some immaturity on the field, so to speak, in a couple of instances. But if we could just tone that down and just, let those actions show up and play on the field, I think that he would most certainly be considered the top wide receiver in all of college football. Yeah. And I'm very excited to have him, him and JT Daniels together for next season.
Yeah, Pickens had 7 catches for 135 yards in the Peach Bowl. He shows out in bowl games, and he did it last year. He did it again this year. Georgia's got a lot of good receivers coming back. Zamir White had 11 rushes, 39 yards in the Peach Bowl. The running game really was not there for Georgia in the Peach Bowl, of course. JT Daniels, 26 of 38, 392 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception in the Peach Bowl. So congratulations to Georgia. You might be wondering when the next game is for the University of Georgia beyond the spring game, of course, and hopefully things are going to get back to normal as far as college football is concerned in 2021. Well, guess what? Next year, in the 2021 season, Georgia will open up against a little old team up the road called Clemson in Charlotte, North Carolina. So there you go. You have UGA immediately jumping into the fire for the University of Clemson next year in game number 1 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Hopefully the stadium will be full. It's a high-profile opening game for college football. Should be quite interesting, don't you think? Clemson, of course, knocked out of the playoffs. So Georgia and Clemson, let's just start off really big, right?
Yeah, I would definitely say that would be all eyes on deck within this game. I mean, wow, what a walker to start receiving off, versus Clemson. I mean, real scary, especially when you consider that I'm not quite sure if Trevor Lawrence is bent on
Yeah, I think he did announce he's going to the NFL.
Okay,
So Trevor will not be there.
Well, either way, I mean, their backup 5-star quarterback, I'm not even going to try to pronounce the guy's name.
Yeah, the unpronounceable one.
Yeah, I will tell you this, regardless if you can pronounce his name or not, I mean, he's a heck of a ball player. He will be a force to reckon with. He will sling the ball, and he will put Georgia's defense on notice, come that game. I mean, Georgia's defense will be tested immediately in game 1. And, game 1 is really a crucial game. I mean, no matter what program we're talking about here, I mean, game 1 is an important game because it's really oftentimes the pivotal game that really is a sign for the rest of your season. So it will be, an interesting game. I mean, I think Georgia's defense will most certainly have to be very, very well prepared and ready for this game.
Yeah, that'll be an interesting one. And, of course, that'll be next, I guess, the end of August, 1st of September for that game. Also out of the University of Georgia, Josh Brooks has been named the athletic director at UGA. Brooks replaces Greg McGarity, who held the post for a decade before retiring. McGarity is now the CEO of Gator Bowl Sports. So Josh Brooks is the new athletic director. I think a good situation, a good guy, a guy who really loves the University of Georgia, and I think he's the man. Josh Brooks, and we lost Matthew again. But all right, well, guys, it's been a good time here on today's Sports Report. With Matthew Hall. It's been good to have Mike Farrell with us on our program today. Good information that he has shared with us about the University of Georgia Bulldogs. And so we're going into the off season, and we'll have all kinds of information for you. Recruiting time is coming back up. I guess the later recruiting time is coming back up. And so we're going to wrap up our program. Thank you for joining us today, and we'll get back with you soon here on today's Sports Report with Matthew Hall.